It's good to see you. Welcome.
Great to see you both. Hello
You
to
too.
everyone.
Hi. So I guess, in essence, I can congratulate you because you've sort of been reelected since there's no one now running against you. So you're the reelected mayor.
No, the
No.
November election is when elections officially happen, but the preliminary election, which sorts everything down to just 2 choices per seat, showed a tremendous amount of support across the city. Every neighborhood, every ward coming out to say that we want to keep moving Boston in the direction of safety for all, of being a home for everyone, of being a beacon for freedom, and we're not going to let up and get pushed back. We are going to keep moving forward.
Have you talked to Josh Kraft since the election? There was some back and forth during the
I have
race.
not received a call back, no.
Okay.
What? Whoa. You called him?
Well, so, I mean, this is not, anyway, if there had been a conversation, it would have been, I'm sure, personal and private anyway, but I received a voicemail a few minutes before the news broke, and I called right back a few minutes after that, and we have not connected since then.
Do you think the city suffers when it doesn't have a competitive race for the final 2 months when people are paying most attention?
You know, I am going to continue to mobilize, and I know our campaign team, and we've already had some conversations with our volunteers out in the neighborhood. November's election is incredibly important. Even if a name has been withdrawn from the ballot, the city council races are incredibly important and impactful for what happens every day in the city of Boston. And we are going to continue to organize and be going door to door and making sure that we're doing everything we can to get out the vote. 93,000, actually almost 94,000 voters came out in the preliminary election. That was a fairly high turnout for this kind of race. We want to see that number significantly higher in November.
Our number is 877-301-8970. Again, that's where you can call or text the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu.
You know, Mayor, we were talking with our listeners before about the president and RFK Jr. yesterday, talking about an unproven connection between taking Tylenol and getting autism, and said that women should tough it out when they're pregnant unless they're really in dire straits, not taking any Tylenol. He also said people shouldn't take, parents should not give Tylenol to their babies after they're born either. You've got 3 kids. You just got a newborn baby. What'd you think of the Tylenol advice that he gave the country?
I feel very lucky that I was able to become pregnant, go through my pregnancy journey, deliver a baby, and be raising a family in a city where we have access to the best hospitals and community health centers in the country, where we have access to experts and doctors who know what they're talking about, and we rely on that rather than news headlines coming out of DC.
But it seems to me, though, that while I totally agree in terms of the quality of care, at least for most people in this city, they don't have a platform like you do. And it seems to me when yesterday this phony information, unproven, about acetaminophen, today, I'm sure you heard at the UN, he says climate change is a con job. It seems to me that local leaders like you have some obligation to try to correct the misinformation. Do you agree with that? And how do you do that?
It's just constant and all over from this federal administration. It's from every angle and on every issue. So I think, absolutely, if someone asks me what to do about their child, and obviously, everyone's individual health circumstances depend on what is happening in the totality of the experiences they have, and that is why you seek medical advice and treatment from those who are trained and prepared and ready to understand the totality of your circumstances, not from any politician or not from anyone who holds himself out to who has somehow obtained this position that is being used in this way. It's too much to try to correct at any given moment, and so I focus on what we can do locally, which is strengthen our healthcare infrastructure. We've actually been putting a lot of resources into closing the gaps between community members who do live in a community with the best healthcare access in the world, but still can feel very disconnected from it on a day-to-day basis. And so we have launched our Live Long and Well Health Equity Agenda, the city's first public health equity agenda that is intended to close gaps in longevity that have been very prevalent across different socioeconomic and racial groups and neighborhoods in our city by focusing on how health is connected to housing and incomes and job security and access to information and being able to be subscribed for all of the discounted programs to save costs and qualify for the access to Medicaid and other programs that for now still exist before the federal government has its way. We have launched new partnerships in that way to keep doing this work locally and to get beyond the headlines and sometimes the false information, the disinformation that is being put out there. People trust those that they know. People trust the organizations that are doing work in the community. And so as of late, our Public Health Commission has been working very, very closely with those community organizations to get resources directly out to our residents.
Is any of the money that you're using to work on health disparities federal money? Because as you know much better than we do, Donald Trump says no more money on anything that deals with health disparities based upon race, class, that sort of thing.
So the particular new coalitions that we have launched to think about health from the platforms of housing and jobs and access to benefits, those were actually funded with a partnership with the Atrius Health Equity Foundation. They have been supporting a long-time coalition that really came out of the pandemic in Boston of community groups, healthcare institutions, and academic institutions to say, how do we all come to the table together and not treat everything as silos? So that funding actually is from an incredibly impactful philanthropic partnership that we've established. There are, however, $300 million annually of federal funds that the city relies on an annual basis, grants mostly for housing, public education, and public safety. And the sort of individual one-off grants we are evaluating. We work very closely and very grateful to the Attorney General's office for creating the space every week for local municipalities to understand what grants are now in danger, what to apply for, what not to apply for. We have to kind of defend each one of those as they come up.
Our number is 877-301-8970. We'll get to your calls in just a minute.
Yeah, just one quick thing before we do get to the calls. We've gotten a lot of texts this morning about ICE arrests and detainments, and there have been several in Boston recently, including an East Boston man who had legal status to be here, was arrested on his way to work, held for nearly 2 days at Burlington ICE facility. In May, his lawyers alleged, this was reported by WBUR. I'm just wondering, is there anything that you can do as the mayor about this? This is happening in other instances around Boston. We're getting texts this morning about things that happened elsewhere. A man that was taken up in Malden, Edgar Herman Elias Escobar. But
Stay in Boston. How about the Brighton thing where the parent
Oh,
was
that's right, in
grabbed with
front
the
of the
elementary
school.
school
That's
student
right.
in the car?
Yeah, is there anything that can be done, or are we helpless in face of ICE detainments?
We've been spending a lot of time taking our cues and instructions from the organizations that are working directly with communities most targeted by the Trump administration and with residents themselves. And the number one ask and one of the most important ways to help is to ensure that there's legal representation. When it comes down to individual cases of detainment and whether there is whether there's a pathway to legal status or whether there's justification or not, having a lawyer there working on your specific case is the most determinative factor as to what the outcomes are. And so the city has been working with our incredible legal community and many of the immigrant community serving organizations to try to expand access to volunteer pro bono attorneys in these cases, or to provide more funding that goes directly to legal representation. Also, just making sure that community members have accurate information to know what people's rights are, to know what the law says and what is beyond the law, and to have the access to some of the community side efforts that have been stood up. The Luce hotline, for example, is a way to vet and report in on the community side actions that are suspected to be from ICE or other federal agents carrying out immigration enforcement. That is a mechanism where we can, where our community partners are vetting to see what is real and what is not real, because we also don't want to sort of spread false rumors of what's happening that can then even create and deepen the fear that community members are feeling. So we're staying coordinated on all of it. Of course, the city, in partnership with the Attorney General, with the governor, and other partners, we are doing the work that's necessary to be ready for any other federal incursions and following very closely the legal cases that have been brought forth and in many cases won when it comes to what the responsibility of, what the authority of local governments is to protect their residents, and how the federal government cannot take over local police departments or militarize American cities because of their own whims.
One last related thing. You do a lot of hiring. If somebody, I'll just make this up, if somebody for a major position to lead a department of your government, I don't know, was caught taking $50,000 in a bag.
Was it a brown kava bag?
A brown,
Okay,
let's say a
yeah.
brown kava bag from two government agents pretending they were business people, and the return for the 50 was an offer to help get them some business with the border security part of the federal government. Would you hire that person?
No, I would not hire that person. I hope, I mean, I
This
hope.
is Tom Homan, for those who don't know, the border czar who is attacking you all the time. What was your reaction to that story? And by the way, the Justice Department dropped the charges, of course.
Right. And I think my first reaction was, sadly, this recognition of just a familiar feeling, right? Just that, unfortunately, it wasn't even surprising at this point that there is a case of such blatant corruption with someone who is in such an important and authoritative role in our formerly democratic government structure. Someone who has been saying a lot about what following the law means and enacting harms on community members with holding up the language that this is to follow the law, this is to keep people safe, this is to do the right thing, when in fact, behind the scenes, there's outright bribery and corruption taking place. And I think it just goes to show, this is not, the fact that it was also then swept under the rug or stopped or ignored is a sign of a very familiar routine throughout the federal administration, right? And that starts from the very top. We have a Qatari jet being given as as an unconditional gift, as if that's not supposed to create any sense of influence. There are crypto schemes that the president himself has been undergoing to enrich, who knows, himself, his family, others in the orbit, directly benefiting from the official title and position. There have been cases now where major media companies, right, ABC, CBS, have cut deals because different legal hooks for needing an official federal permission to accomplish something that the business needed to be done meant that they could have a say in the company's eventual growth or success or profits, which then resulted in frivolous lawsuits carried forward by the president, leading to settlements where there was some direct cash payment then given with a wink, wink, nod, nod that maybe then the legal processes and the federal processes would move forward. So I wish this were a conversation just about Tom Homan, someone who has whose behavior has already been so shameful just from the very beginning all the way through, and who clearly doesn't understand the law. And he's been wrong on the law, wrong on safety, wrong on cities. But this is unfortunately a marker of a larger pattern within this federal administration.
Let's go to Tommy in South Boston. You're on with Mayor Michelle Wu. Welcome, Tommy. Hi.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, Mayor Tom here.
Hello.
Calling with regard to by the way, congratulations on the victory on the 9th.
Thank you.
Calling with regard to the P&G proposed rezoning, the Gillette site, 30 acres. I think they're asking the city for building heights upwards of 30 stories. I think they're asking for a level of housing density that's not in line with what the community is interested in. I'm just curious what the plan is, both yourself and the rest of the administration, to re-engage with the leaders of the community so that they can get their points across. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. If it sounds like maybe you have been engaged so far, and there's much more to come, so many more opportunities for community process to proceed. I mean, Boston is a very built-up city already, right? Unlike other parts of the country where there's sort of wide open swaths of land that can be turned into new roads or new neighborhoods, it is pretty rare that there are parcels or opportunities of this kind of scale in the city. And when it happens then, because they're so rare, because this is the sort of the last chance to fill in certain places with different amenities or assets that are needed for the larger community, we have to get it right. And we have to get it right from not just a, next year perspective or even 4 years, 10 years. We have to get it right for a 50-year perspective. This is an incredibly important area for our climate safety and resilience and protecting against the floodwaters that will come in through the Four-Point Channel and right there along the waterfront. And it's also really important as we're thinking about housing goals and transportation access and everything that the nearby seaport has been built up, sometimes without all of the public amenities and infrastructure built in there. So we are nowhere near being done with decision making on this. I have personally not yet gotten all the way into the weeds on what should happen there. I'm starting to process some of the feedback that we've gotten as our chief of planning and others have reported back up to me the results of recent community meetings. But we have to figure out what the arts and housing and affordability components and open space will be. We also have to figure out the phasing of it. So it cannot be just that we end up agreeing to a certain level of affordability or a certain amount of open space, but then everything else gets built first, and then the affordable doesn't come until the end. We need to accelerate and agree on what comes first and in what order as well.
Tommy, thank you. You ever seen the movie David Abel made called The Inundation District?
Yes.
Yeah, about climate and the impacts on the seaport. It's worth people checking out. Tommy, thank you much for your call. Sandy from Roxbury raises an issue on the GBH Daily newsletter that your former opponent raised pretty regularly. And the question from Sandy is, what's your administration's plan for mass and cast? And then in capital letters, Sandy wrote, details please, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was interesting because just yesterday, in fact, we got an ask from one of the local news platforms saying, was ICE involved, because there are far fewer people gathering at mass and cast now, so was there some coordination with federal officials? So no, absolutely not. In fact, we have been continuing to carry out the details and the plans that we've laid out for the last several months here, that after building up an infrastructure to finally be able to provide services and treatment for people to get off the street rather than just being pushed away with nowhere else to go, and then after building up the coordinated response so that our public safety officials, public health, and community partners could act all together. And then now, after being in a place where we've established new partnerships for treatment beds on demand with transportation to be able to immediately capitalize when someone is ready and willing to go. And after graduating another very large class of police officers, which allows for our staffing levels to be where they need to be on the public health side, 24-hour response, as well as on the public safety side, we are now at a point where we're able to see some of the results. Now, every year, the challenge looks very different at Mass and Cast depending on what season we are in. And as the weather becomes colder, it looks different than when we're in the height of summer. But what our numbers do tell us that we've been measuring very carefully is that the partnership with the Gavin Foundation, where we have funding to set aside beds, knowing that we will need them, rather than an individual having an interaction either with public safety or public health and agreeing and deciding that they want to seek treatment then, but then having to spend the next several hours identifying a bed and calling around to every location, and maybe the individual has changed their mind by the time that opportunity actually is open. Now it's on demand and it's available and ready to go. And so we have now had several dozen people take advantage of that opportunity, and it's a big challenge. It's a national challenge with the opiate crisis that cities everywhere are trying to deal with. But in Boston, it is of a scale that it is a manageable challenge. And we've already helped hundreds of people access treatment, housing, job counseling, and really are living their lives in recovery now. Of course, several hundred more people have arrived, and people every day continue to arrive in Boston needing services. But we're getting to the point where we're able to, I think, see where balance might be possible with the increased visibility and presence of our public safety involvement, with the increased resources around public health and treatment and recovery, and then with this critical component of being able to deliver that instantaneously rather than having a large gap and delay.
If you talked, there was a woman who owns, I forget her name, who owns a restaurant, I think it's a Cuban restaurant, who testified at that hearing in the beginning of September. She used their 401k, they depleted their funds, the restaurant had to close. I think her line was, we're just asking the city something like to think outside the box, to do something. Did you talk to her, by the way?
Nivea, yes. I mean, Nivea and Hector both are incredible leaders in the city. From opening up Merengue way back as one of the anchor staples in the city to Mexicantes, Doña Habana. Anyway, they are not just restaurateurs, but community anchors. And it is heartbreaking to see people who have poured in so much still sort of just hanging on out of a faith in the city, and that this is a place where people deserve to have opportunities to have fun and enjoy cultures.
What do you say to them?
We actually had a group meeting with several of the businesses in that area all together fairly recently. Boston Police, Public Health, all of our department heads, small business were present, and we are ramping up the specific locations and times that are necessary. We can provide the overall infusion of resources at the city level, but unless we know from community members exactly when, where, how, that helps us tailor the approach more. And so we've been working very closely, even more so, and we're going to do everything we can for Nivea, Doña Habana, and also many of the business owners and residents who have felt very intense quality of life impacts.
We're talking to Mayor Michelle Wu, 877-301-8970.
You know, we talked to you a lot about bike lanes. There was a story in the Globe the other day from a writer, Paul Baskin, who's very concerned about motorized vehicles being in bike lanes. He thinks that they shouldn't be there, e-bikes, scooters, skateboards in those protected bike lanes. What do you think?
There's a lot of behavior that's happening from, particularly we notice with delivery scooters, that is just flat out illegal and dangerous. That is why we've been working to get the information and the data that food delivery companies, the three biggest food delivery platforms, know where their drivers are going because they have GPS in the phones and they're tracking very carefully what time each delivery is made, when the food is picked up, and this and that. And the pressure that is put on to make those transactions as quickly as possible probably is some of the driving force behind why, on any given day, you can see them going the wrong way down the road or driving on the sidewalk, et cetera. Our streets need to be safe for everyone. And even as the larger sort of technology and economic environment puts more pressure on the instantaneous and the ability to get what you need right away, we have to design our streets so that they're safe for, some people call it the 880 range, for an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old to be able to cross and get around.
Yeah, should they be together, though? Should the scooters be in the same place as the bikes, or should they be, I don't know how you would do that. Bikes, scooters, cars?
Well, even when you just talk about bikes, the details now are starting to flow together, because we've actually, just from city government, been putting more into making electric bikes available. They provide a little bit of boost, and so when it's if you haven't been on one before, when you start to pedal, you kind of get the extra momentum, and then when you want to slow down, you stop pedaling or you brake. But that has made it possible through our Blue Bike system, through the bike share network. The electric bikes that are part of that network, they're slightly different rate, but still very accessible and affordable is the goal. And this will allow people to go much longer distances and commutes. We've heard directly from members of the disability community or for seniors that this is what makes bike riding actually possible and feasible, just to have that extra boost. It would allow someone who maybe recently had a baby and is trying to do bike to work day and isn't quite in shape since then. I went in this last year on an electric bike, and that made it possible to go all the way from Roslindale downtown. But those go faster than a standard bike.
So fewer scooters would be the idea if you have more electric bikes.
But they're all sort of, I think the question, and this is probably a larger statewide question, but having some kind of speed limit no matter what, right, for whatever kind of vehicle it is, even otherwise, if you start to distinguish between different kinds of vehicles, then you'll get, is this a bike, is this a scooter, it's able to go fast, it has some power to it, but I think setting some real standards around who's using it and what the appropriate speeds and behaviors are, that's where we should be.
Let's take one more call before we take a break. Nathan in Dorchester, you're on Mayor Wu. Welcome.
Hi, Mayor Wu. This is Nathan Bishop from Dorchester.
Hello.
Yesterday on Wales Street, my vehicle was stolen from me in broad daylight, and I called the police, and they said they couldn't respond to it and to instead come to the station and file a report. In the process of waiting for an Uber to the police station, I saw a notification on Citizen that there was a wreck on Talbot Ave. Opened it up, saw it was my car totaled on Talbot Ave with all the airbags deployed. And I ran over, and Boston police was there, and I asked if they had seen the suspect, and they said they did, but that they were not allowed to give chase. And yesterday I felt a little let down because not only did they not respond while the crime was initially unfolding, they didn't chase the suspect because they claimed that they weren't allowed to. And so now I have a totaled car, and I feel unsafe in my neighborhood with my pregnant wife here. And I've been vocal to you one-on-one in the past and through other channels of how I felt that BPD is not responsive in Dorchester, that they don't respond while crimes are unfolding. And I'm wondering what your plans are to improve that, and I don't know, maybe have someone follow up to maybe see if the suspect can be caught.
Yes, I'm so sorry, Nathan, and really appreciate you taking the time to call in and share what happened so that we can learn from it. I actually just was running over late because I was in a meeting with the police commissioner, so I'll follow up directly to see what the latest is with this particular case, and I think I know how to reach you, so I can follow up also just to understand what else we should know about in terms of what happened or didn't happen with the response. I'll say big picture, the needs that that our police department is having to respond to is growing every day. If you look at, for example, 911 call volumes, the number of calls that have come in have continued to increase very, very significantly. Some of that is population driven, but even greater than the trend in population growth is the frequency of calls. And we love that. That is a good thing because that actually shows that people trust government and believe that there will be a response when they need help. Otherwise, the worst thing is if people disconnect and don't call at all because they believe it won't matter if they call. But then responding to those in the right way and as quickly as possible and in an acceptable amount of time is important to maintain that trust. So we, as I just mentioned, we had graduated another almost 100 officers from the academy a couple weeks ago. There's actually a class currently in progress as well. This was the first time we had overlapping classes in a while because we know the staffing levels and the need is great. And finding ways to triage and manage all the calls that come in is very, very important. We're always going to go to the most serious calls as defined in one way or the other, but the feedback is also helpful that sometimes when calls get coded through the 911 system, we may miss things that are actually a sign that this category should be coded a little higher priority in the response, as well as we're always getting feedback on that. So I will follow up on this front, and hopefully we can resolve this and make sure that there's justice served in your case.
Nathan, thank you much for your call.
Just really quickly, why would the police not be able to chase a suspect?
I'm going to follow up on that and
that
understand
sounds
what they mean. I don't know if they meant vehicular chase or if this was actually the policy or not the policy, so I will dig in on the details.
The mayor brought us a booklet of some sort.
What is it?
So the little swag for the month is a collection of poetry by Parker Vincent Alva, who is the outgoing Boston youth poet laureate. And so we now have put out the call for the next youth poet laureate to put themselves forward, or for someone else to put themselves forward. Please, recommendations, applications coming in until October 29th, but just amazing, incredible talent in our city, and we are a hub of arts and culture, and love to highlight and shine on those who are continuing to move it forward.
That's
wow,
great. Thank you so much.
There's a lot of poems in here. Is this person, what is the deal with this person?
So Parker Vincent Alba is the most recent. They just concluded their tenure as the city's official youth poet laureate.
Okay.
You
okay.
got there, Marjorie?
So the person
you got
is,
a lot of poems.
well,
right
the
in that
person
book
is
there.
young, though, youth poet laureate.
Exactly.
I mean, how old, do you know?
I don't
Ballpark?
know. I'm
Young.
not sure. I'm
Young.
not sure.
Okay, let's go back to the phones in West Roxbury. Janine is on with Mayor Wu. Welcome, Janine. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Excellent.
Okay. Hi, Mayor Wu. Just the issue with Boston Transportation Department for the schools. I understand that it's a bit.
Hey, Janine, we're going to put you on hold for a second. We'll come right back. Your connection's horrible. Move around or do something, and after we take the next call, we'll come right back to you and give it another try. Where do you want to go, Marjorie?
Gail and Sharon, thank you for calling.
Hi, Gail.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I have an unusual statement. Boston is considered the face of Massachusetts across the country and internationally. So what happens to Boston's mayor happens to our whole city and impacts that. I believe she's doing a wonderful job, and she's fighting for our whole state, just as our governor. And I want to know what people who aren't even in Boston can do to help support her with all the attacks she's under.
Thanks, Gail. How about it, Mayor?
Thank you, Gail. Just calling in has made my day. I really appreciate that and completely agree that all of our, in terms of the fate of our economy or how we fare with climate change or housing production and all of those goals, for example, we're all interconnected, and the families that we take care of are spread out with many, many connections, or people who live outside and work in the city, or vice versa. So I think what I would ask of you and anyone else is to be just as involved in your local communities. There are many things that cities need to do across all of Massachusetts, whether it's relative to the State House or in other sort of key issues around setting housing goals and things that should happen locally. So if you stay plugged in, stay engaged, and also when we have our events here or when we have efforts here, we'd love to have you come in and be involved and help be an ambassador for what's happening. I think my biggest push right now is that all of what we absorb as a tax from the federal government, whether it's on industries like research and life sciences and healthcare, or whether it's directly to our community members and the very identities and lives of our residents, or different grants that are being, anyway, all of this is under the larger umbrella that we're waging a war when it comes to the narrative of who cities are and who gets to decide what safety means. To me and to the people, the people that I meet across Boston, cities are beautiful, amazing places where the fact that we get to live in communities with people who are different from us is what makes our city stronger. And it is coming together across our differences, learning to work together, finding common ground, that in fact drives creativity, innovation, and all that has made our city special for nearly 400 years. And so it can be, especially if you may not live and breathe Boston every day, sometimes what you read in the Globe or other outlets picks at different things that are happening. We want to get better every single day. But last year, Boston had the safest year ever on record, right? The number of homicides that the city recorded was far and away the lowest of any major city nationally, and the lowest that we had seen since we started recording data 70 years ago. Throughout that entire time, the Boston Globe didn't even write a single piece, and to this day still really hasn't delved into how that happened, right? What are the things and the partnerships and the ways, even this past July, just a couple months ago, when we're used to many cities around the country kind of gird up, because the summer tends to be the time where we need the most violence intervention efforts. People are out and about, and that is when we sort of brace for the tragedies that happen and things that we need to work harder on. But in July of 2025, Boston recorded 0 homicides. That is a remarkable number that does not show we are done, right? We are far from finished or thinking that we're ready to slow down or retire our efforts. I say we're the safest major city in the country because it's important to mark when progress works and when efforts are making a difference. And it's also important to remind ourselves that we hold Boston and we hold ourselves to the very highest standards. We will be the best when it comes to safety, when it comes to every area. And I think sometimes some of our suburban partners can not always get the full story if you're not living it every day of what does Mass and Cass actually feel like now compared to what it was before, or what's happening in our schools now compared to where we before, or on safety. And please come into our city, spend your money here, enjoy our events here, and tell the story of what you experience when you are here, because having that connection and having that sense of who we actually are and the benefit, the beauty of cities everywhere, that is the whole game right now when it comes to defining what we're trying to do and who we're trying to do it with.
Mayor Wu, before we try Janine from West Roxbury a second time, there was a lawsuit filed against the city and you the other day by a former city employee who says your chief of economic opportunity and inclusion, I think, acted inappropriately towards her. The reason she was fired, she alleges, among other things, is because you wanted to protect him. I haven't heard a response from you to the filing of the lawsuit. What's your reaction to this matter?
So anytime there is a lawsuit, we take that very seriously and we'll go through all of the specific steps to make sure we're answering that fully and thoroughly in the court process. I will say I finally had the chance to read through kind of what was alleged and being presented there, and we've done our own internal reviews of certain components of that and come to the conclusions that the city has. There were some new things that were presented in there that I know are flat out not true. Some of the assertions that, did I get involved in taking away this or that opportunity, when I had no idea that any of those things were even happening or associated with this situation. So, we'll go through the court process, but now that I've had a chance to read it, there's many things that are put in there that I think will be resolved clearly and quickly in the court.
Here's a good one from Rebecca. She's texting, why are the toilets in Faneuil Hall frequently, yes, non-functional? I'm a walking tour guide, and again, yesterday I stopped there for a quick break. I said you can use the toilets, but they weren't working. There are toilets in Quincy Market, but that's another 15 minutes out of the tour. We do have a lack of toilet problem here, Back Bay in general, and now in Faneuil Hall as well. So what's the story?
Okay, I want to just double check this link, because for this very reason, we made a map of all the public bathrooms that exist in Boston.
Of course you did.
Oh.
Let me see if boston.gov/bathrooms works. Yes, boston.gov/bathrooms goes to it. There's probably other links that also direct to it. But you can click on it, and then there's a public restroom map that shows not only where it is, but looks like how many there are.
Wow.
As well. Okay. Anyway,
That
they
is-
sort of
I
you can
didn't
zoom
know
in
that
on different
existed.
areas.
Wait, what is it one more time?
Boston.gov/bathrooms
.gov,
was
I'm
one of the
sorry. Okay.
one of the ways to get there.
Put that down, Jim,
Restrooms
'cause you may
probably
need
works
it.
as well.
I did.
Yeah.
But I am worried now with this call that some of our mapped bathrooms may in fact not be functional or working in the moment. So I'm going to check on Faneuil Hall in general. I will say, many of our public buildings are older, which is why we have needed to really put a lot of resources into getting our facilities planning and capital projects going, just to fix the little details that matter a whole lot. But that map is there, and we will find a way to double check to see which ones are functional, and I'll see exactly why the Faneuil Hall ones were down.
Let's try Janine a second time. Hope the connection's better. You're in West Roxbury. You're on with the mayor. Hi, Janine.
Hi, thank you. Sorry
Much
about
better,
that.
much better.
Is it better?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Awesome. Okay. So Mayor Wu, I was just wondering if you could help. We recently are sending my daughter to a school in Dorchester, Boston Collegiate. It's a charter school. And they started earlier. They started August 25th. And since then, we're having an issue with the afternoon bus. It is actually a special needs bus. It doesn't come to the school to pick them up till half hour, 45 minutes late. And we're a month in and it's still happening. So what's happening is you get kids like my daughter who get on the bus at 6:20 a.m. and not getting home till almost 5 o'clock. And she's 10 years old. So I know that the transportation department has a big job and heat, but I do think that they should be held accountable, and be able to fix things.
Let's hear from the mayor, Janine. Thank you
Absolutely.
much for your call.
Thank you, Janine. And please, if you could give your information to the producer on the line.
Don't
I'd love
hang
to
up.
follow up directly, because
Please.
the way that we can resolve, we need to get the specific information to be able to resolve, and they can figure out what's happening here. But I think, as Janine points out, Boston Public Schools is actually responsible for transporting more than just our students who go to BPS schools directly. We also transport across every school, every type of school by state law, and that means that there are thousands of students who are riding our yellow BPS school buses who go to a school outside the district that often may have a different starting schedule than fits into the district's 3 waves. So we have a 7:15, 8:15, 9:15 start so that our buses can do 3 runs across BPS schools. But sometimes when it's a charter school, they'll start slightly in between those times or off, and then by the time the bus that is scheduled to get them finishes the other BPS run, it's constantly late. Whenever there's a situation where a bus is frequently running late, it's often because something is happening with the stacking of the previous runs that it ends up trickling down, so that either we need to deploy a separate bus altogether or figure out how to tighten up what's happening prior to that particular route starting. We have had some really important signs of progress this year. So basically every day since the start of school to the last time I was getting data, which was a week ago, every single day was the highest on-time performance that has ever been recorded since we've been recording that bus data from, I think, about 2013 or right around then. A lot of that has been driven by our new technology platform. So last year, we instituted for the first time a real-time GPS mapping platform that also is an app where families can get real-time information about where their students are. Just like when you're taking an Uber and you can see exactly when you're predicted to get dropped off or when the car will get to you, families now have that information to track their students getting on and off the bus. That is also given us for the first time real data on who is actually riding the bus and who is routed but never comes to ride the bus. And then we instituted new policies where if you haven't ridden the bus for a very long period of time, you're removed from that route unless you can call back and get back on the route anytime you want to start riding, but you're removed from that route so that we're not always stopping by your house or driving by just in case. That makes the routes more effective and efficient, and the benefits then again trickle down to the other runs that happen after that route that you are on. So this was the first school year where data from last year in terms of who wasn't riding the bus helped set the routes from the very beginning. And we knew there was a certain batch of students who were not bus riders because the data had shown that, and we did outreach to double check that and triple check that. And so from the beginning, it's been better. None of that matters, of course, if your child's bus is routinely late. So let's work on this. Dan and our entire BPS transportation team are wizards at figuring out how to do this, and the new practices that we've had for training, and our bus drivers union and really working with us to make sure we're doing even better every single day has started to bear fruit, but we want to make sure that works for every single student.
Janine, don't hang up. The mayor wants your contact information. We'll share it with her, so please stay on hold. We're talking to Mayor Wu. Mayor, every month you're here, we talk about something that was an issue in the short-lived mayoral campaign, the cost of White Stadium to the city. We know that the soccer team or football team, whatever they're called, got their loan that they were looking for. You said a couple of months ago you wouldn't have the final number until December, but you also told us last month you'll keep updating the city's obligation as you know it. What is the latest on what the city is on the hook for?
Yeah, so in fact, I don't know if this has directly happened today or is about to happen or is known publicly, but today was the day that the first set of early construction bids is going out the door that has an estimate attached to them. Again, the final number will be settled once the bids are responded to and contractors then tell us what they're willing to be paid to do the work. But we have put out a package for foundation work and masonry and some of the earlier chunk of construction that has a $34 million estimate attached to it, with our best conversations with the cost of materials and the cost of labor and where that should settle in this current moment in the market and the economy. To date, prior to this, $5.6 million have been spent on construction. That includes demolition, which was around $2.5 million, and some of the earlier site work to prepare for laying the foundation and all of that. So this will be on top of that, and then there will be one more of the sort of larger items. I don't know all the construction terms. Once the construction documents are finalized for the sort of larger and more final set of contracting efforts that need to be done on top of the foundation, that will go out late this fall.
You don't have a best guess number as of the moment, do you, or do you? What is internally, what's the bottom line number as best you know? Do you know?
So abatement and demolition work came in at or even slightly below what the estimate was. This $34 million reflects some escalation in terms of the cost of materials.
I meant the total.
But the total will come in when the total comes in, but this is how the process goes.